This week on Vaticano, and the Vatican announces a Rosary Marathon during the month of May. We talk to Father Salvatore Perrella, a Mariologist, about Mary's role in salvation history as we celebrate the 104th anniversary of the apparitions of Fatima. And Cardinal George Pell opens up about his life after being released from jail in 2020. After this and more, Vaticano starts now. In celebration of the month of Mary and to pray for the end of the coronavirus, the Vatican has declared a Rosary initiative for the month of May. The Pontifical Council for the Promotion of the New Evangelization said 30 Marian shrines around the world are participating in leading the Rosary during this month-long prayer marathon. The goal is to encourage families and communities worldwide to join in prayer. Pope Francis began the initiative on May 1st at Our Lady of Help, a fresco near the altar of St. Leo in St. Peter's Basilica. There he blessed rosaries, which were sent to the 30 Marian shrines.
Padre, Figlio, e Spirito Santo.
On May the 31st, the Holy Father will close the month of prayer from a special place in the Vatican Gardens.
Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with thee.
Some of the most famous Marian shrines are partaking in the Rosary Initiative, such as the Basilica of the Immaculate Conception in the United States, Nuestra Señora de Guadalupe in Mexico, and Our Lady of the Rosary in Fatima, serving as an example of the universal power of prayer.
And blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God.
More than 100 years have passed since the first of the 6 apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima. It was the 13th of May, 1917, when a mysterious shining lady appeared in heaven to the 3 shepherd children, Lucia dos Santos and her cousins Francisco and Jacinta Marto. All this happened around noon in a village near Fatima called Cova da Iria. While they were tending a small flock, the 3 shepherd children saw 2 luminous phenomena, like 2 flashes of lightning. A lady appeared in the sky, radiating a dazzling light and holding a rosary in her hands. Lucia, Francisco, and Jacinta received apparitions on the 13th of each month until the month of October, when in the presence of a large crowd the so-called Miracle of the Sun took place. During an interruption of a rainstorm, the sky suddenly opened up and the solar disk was seen to change color, size, and position for about 10 minutes. It was a sun that was possible to stare at directly. In 1930, the apparitions of Our Lady of Fatima were declared worthy of faith visions by the Bishop of Lleida, thus authorizing the devotion. These apparitions brought with them a message linked to the 3 secrets. They were written down by Lucia once she became a nun. She wrote the first 2 in her memoirs, while the 3rd part she gave in a sealed envelope to the Bishop of Lleida and handed it over in 1957 to the secret archive of the Holy Office, the contents of which were disclosed in 2000. The 3 revelations that Our Lady made to the little shepherds have gone down in history as the secrets of Fatima. Number 1 was the vision of hell, described by Sister Lucia as a great sea of fire, which seemed to be under the earth, immersed in that fire demons and souls, as if they were transparent and black or bronze embers, with a human form floating in the fire. Secret number 2 is about Russia and the Sacred Heart, The second secret concerns devotion to the Immaculate Heart of Our Lady to prevent God's chastisements. I will come to ask for the consecration of Russia to my Immaculate Heart and for communion of reparation on the first Saturdays. If they accept my requests, Russia will be converted and will have peace. If not, it will spread its errors throughout the world, promoting wars and persecutions of the Church. Secret number 3, the bishop dressed in white. The last secret deals with doing penance for the conversion of the world. It speaks of a pilgrimage of a bishop dressed in white, who goes to the top of a mountain, and using the words of Lucia. Before arriving there, he crossed a large city, half in ruins, and half in trembling with a faltering step, afflicted with pain and sorrow, praying for the souls of the corpses he met on his way. Having reached the top of the mountain, prostrate on his knees at the foot of the great cross, he was killed by a group of soldiers, who shot at him with several shots and arrows. This is a message still witnessed to today by the majestic sanctuary, erected on the site where Our Lady appeared to the 3 shepherd children. 2 of them, Jacinta and Francisco, were canonized by Pope Francis in 2017. In a few moments, we'll be back with more on Vaticano. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano.
The tsunami of COVID, you don't call it a wave, it's a silent tsunami devastating millions of lives.
Over 200,000 people have died in India of COVID-19, and a record 18 million people have tested positive.
People are at loss. I mean, every family is faced with COVID.
Father Noel Matichetti is the director of Bosconet, a Catholic charity in India. Father Noel, you were in Hyderabad, in the center of India. What is the situation like there?
We are short of hospital beds. There is a huge shortage of oxygen cylinders, and medical health care is really crumbled. People are dead and they are not able to dispose them.
In the city of Ranchi in the east of India, Father Theodore Mascarenhas is the bishop. What impact is this leaving on the people that you are meeting and the faithful? How are they being affected by this disastrous pandemic that is ripping through India?
You see, it is cutting across faith lines, caste lines, rich-poor lines. It's cutting across all lines.
The daily death toll continues to rise across India, and in his parish of Ranchi, Bishop Mascarenhas says a number of priests and seminarians have now been infected.
I have 7 priests in hospital right now, and those are the lucky ones who found a hospital bed. I have another 7 seminarians who are sick.
And in the region you are in, Ranchi, and you are bishop in Ranchi, it's a very poor region. Do the people have access to healthcare, or are they simply staying at home and fighting the virus on their own?
That's our biggest problem here. Those who can rush their people to the hospitals. You know, I have taken each of my priests personally to the hospital in my own jeep very often. And there's no way out. How do you do? When ambulances are not available to you.
The vaccination process in India has been slow, and with over 1 billion people, many experts feel it will take years to complete the vaccine program. With a population of 1.4 billion people, how do you think the vaccine rollout will be implemented across the country? It will be such a huge challenge.
We have managed to vaccinate 1.7% population, and it is really irony. I do not know what's a big contradiction. A country which produces the highest number of vaccinations is not able to vaccinate its own people.
It's difficult
very, very difficult. I lost a priest, 30 years old, just 1 year of ordination, 5 days ago.
Sia santificato il tuo nome, venga il tuo regno, sia fatta la tua volontà, come in cielo, così in terra.
Pope Francis' Rosary initiative to ask for Our Lady's intercession for an end to the pandemic is much needed as people across the globe continue to battle COVID-19.
Ave Maria, piena di grazia, il Signore è con te. Tu sei benedetta fra le...
Father Salvatore Perrella, a Mariologist in Rome, explains why Our Lady has the power to help in this global pandemic.
E nella tradizione cristiana di Oriente ed Occidente,
in both the Eastern and Western tradition, Mary was always seen as one who intercedes, she who prays and takes care of us. That's also why the maternal work of Mary in this case is emphasized by this initiative.
Ave Maria.
Father Perrella says that both the Bible and the teachings of the Catholic Church illustrate Our Lady's very special role in the salvation of mankind.
In the divine plan that is concretely taught to us by the Gospel, a great theologian of the 19th century said, Mary is an associate redemption in the work of redemption.
But all the devotion and prayers given to Our Lady are not an overshadowing or replacement of Jesus' role as man's Redeemer.
Ave Maria, piena di grazia, il Signore è con te. Tu sei benedetta fra le donne, e benedetto il frutto del tuo seno.
Cristo è il mediatore.
On March the 24th, Pope Francis, during the general audience, addressed a theological debate about whether the Church should issue a dogmatic definition declaring Mary co-redemptrix in honor of her role in humanity's salvation.
Ma come madre, non come dea.
As a mother, not a goddess, not as a co-redeemer, as a mother. It's true, Christian piety always gives her beautiful titles, just as a son gives them to his mother. How many beautiful things a son says to his mother, whom he loves so much. How many beautiful things. But we must be careful. The things the Church and the saints say, the beautiful things they say to Mary, don't take anything away from the redeeming uniqueness of Christ. He is the only Redeemer.
Redentrice di Cristo, e lui è l'unico Redentore.
The Second Vatican Council, which for us is an authoritative doctrine of the Church, speaks of cooperation. So if I say co-redemption, it is not shockery, but not in harmony with the doctrinal theological language of the Church today. That is, attentive to the ecumenical dimensions and attentive to the pastoral dimension. So I would not say co-redemptrix. No, because the title is wrong, because it is not appropriate, because it can lead to a misunderstanding, and we know the long history of the Church regarding the divisions that happened due to unnecessary misunderstandings. This, I believe, is the true intention of the Pope, to avoid any unnecessary errors.
Evitare gli errori inutili.
Pope Francis is very devoted to Our Lady, and he never misses an opportunity to pray in front of the icon, Salus Populi Romani, at Rome's Basilica of St. Mary Major, before leaving for international trips. One of the titles that the Roman Catholic tradition gave to the Virgin Mary is Salus Populi Romani, or in English, Protectress and Health of the Roman People. After the break, we speak with Cardinal George Pell, who is also strongly devoted to Our Lady, about his second book, based on his diaries, kept in prison. Welcome back. You're watching Vaticano.
Your Eminence, Cardinal George Pell, it's great to be back with you again.
Likewise, Colm. Very pleased to be here.
Reading your second volume of Prison Diaries, I was struck by the amount of letters you received from all over the world, sometimes 70 or 80 letters a week. Who was writing to you?
Sometimes 70 or 80 letters a day at different stages, but obviously. I received all up about 4,000 letters. Every type of person, most of them believers, not all of them. Most of them Catholics, but not all of them.
And the non-believers who were writing to you, what was their interest in the case or in your story?
Generally, the non-believers who wrote were outraged by the injustice that they saw in the story. One regular recounted how this person wasn't an unbeliever, but you hadn't been going to Mass. And they were so outraged by what they read that they raced into a Catholic workmate and explained that they decided to go back to Mass for some perverse reason. But I was quite pleased about that, because one of my concerns was the effect of my conviction on Catholics on the edge or people who were wobbling.
You were concerned that it might turn them
Tip
away
them
from
over,
the faith?
turn them away from the faith.
Or bring them back in closer
Well, in
to
fact, I heard more about people coming back to the faith than I heard about people who were leaving. But I suppose if those who were leaving might have chosen not to write to me.
To tell you. And a lot of prisoners writing to you also?
Quite a few, quite a few. One fellow asked for advice on how he should deal with his teenage son. And I said, well, that's a little bit difficult. I don't know you or your son, but I said a few words, and I think he followed the line, and I don't think it was disastrous.
Is it true, Your Eminence, that some of the letters were withheld from you because they were hate mail? And I even read in the diary that someone had said to you that some of the letters were withheld if they had photographs with children in them as well.
I think you were supposed to be told if they withheld any letters. I had received 2 or 3 hostile letters. I wasn't told about any others that came in. I did hear about letters where the photographs had been removed, because if you're convicted of pedophilia, you are not supposed to be exposed to photos of children. It was a bit of a mess, because I was told that material had been sent to me and it never arrived. I'd heard it was sent twice and hadn't arrived, so I commenced dialogue about it. And one friendly guard brought up a whole plastic basket of mail which had never been delivered to me, which I went through, and of course there were quite a few photos and letters and all these things. But some of the photos were, which contained the photos of children, were withheld. But if you're convicted of pedophilia, they're the conditions. And there was no way around it. Of course I didn't like it.
What was your relationship like with the prison guards?
That was probably the biggest surprise of the jail.
Do you think you got some sort of special treatment because you were the famous Cardinal George Pell and so high profile in the media?
I don't think so. I think some of them went out of their way to ensure that wasn't the case. All of them, even the ones that were a bit hostile, were correct. And most of them were very human.
The diaries are a remarkable insight into prison life. The simple things that we take for granted, of course. For example, one day the prison warden allowed you to play with the basketball when it was only permitted on a Sunday, or you were allowed to water the plants in the garden. What were the little pleasures that you enjoyed when in prison?
Oh, there were very simple things like that. Food that I liked.
Could you request a certain type of food?
Yes, yeah. That was another thing that surprised me. You'd get a menu listing 3 or 4 options for every main meal during the week. Now, I think that was probably a necessity because of the different racial backgrounds of us prisoners. An especially sad group were the drug mules. Often they didn't speak English. Here in Australia, they'd come in from overseas with drugs, caught, imprisoned, and had no one to visit them at all. So they were entirely dependent on the volunteer helpers and the chaplains.
And they wouldn't have the know-how or the resources that, let's say, you had to put together an appeal.
Oh, no, well, I mean, I was blessed in a number of ways, in a very unfortunate situation. First of all, the charges, I was able to refute them. Now, you could be spectacularly unlucky and get charges fabricated against you, which were very difficult to disprove. The other thing was that I had a lot of extremely loyal friends. My family was completely loyal. People who were very capable. I had access to a wonderful legal team, but I had access to friends who were very good lawyers. And also I had a lot of people with considerable money kicked in to help pay my expenses. So I had all sorts of advantages that are not available to most people, and I acknowledge that.
That was another fascinating part of the diaries, just the whole process of you formulating your appeal to the High Court and it going from you to your legal team, them sending the drafts back to you, you trying to decide whether you should ask for bail or not. And what struck me was the mounting costs that must have just been rising and rising. Was that something you were concerned about? Because another part of the diary, you said that I think your legal team had applied for $800,000 to have your legal expenses covered by the state of Victoria, and they allocated $390,000. And you said, while it wasn't what you wanted, it was better than a kick in the pants.
Yeah, well, it certainly was, and I'm grateful for that. My first parish priest said I was the sort of person who never worried about money as long as it was coming in. Now, I knew the debts were very considerable. They ran probably 3 million plus. There's still a significant amount that remains to be paid, but I wasn't particularly worried about it. I was disconcerted, but I wasn't, and I'm not particularly worried about it.
We spoke about
I'm very grateful to all the people who kicked in, and sometimes very, very generously, and many, many ordinary battlers put in money to the Defence Fund too, and I'm very grateful for that.
But that's something you're still working on now?
Yes, that story's not over.
We talked about your relationship with the prison guards, and I know that you didn't have much interaction with the other prisoners because you were in isolation, but you could certainly hear them at points. What was that sound like? Was it at night time when you were trying to sleep? You write bits about the banging, hearing prisoners shout that they wanted to go home, others yelling back at them to shut up.
It was very sad. Sometimes the people were so angry. Sometimes they were so full of anguish. Sometimes it was pathetic and childish. I heard one night I couldn't catch all of it, a prolonged debate between two of them over whether I was really guilty, which was interesting.
Were you shouting, chiming in as well?
No, I just let them go.
Another incident that wasn't so pleasant, you were walking down the corridor in the prison from your cell to the exercise pen, and for some reason there was a gate open or something, but a prisoner spat at you and it landed on you.
No, it wasn't quite like that. I was actually in the exercise cell, and there was an area which was never opened for me on any other occasion and had been left open inadvertently. And so I was walking around, actually I just happened to be saying the Rosary, and suddenly I was spat on, or attempt to spit on. So I was furious and turned and went to the grill to rebuke whoever it was, and to my slight amazement, He promptly fled. Now, I mean, we were separated completely by a terrible grill, but he continued to abuse me.
He was calling you a rock spider.
Yes, I'm not sure that I got the correct term. I might have called it a black spider or a rock spider, but it's a term of abuse for pedophiles.
Was that the first time you got very angry in prison?
Yes, I think it is. I snapped at one guard when he asked me whether I was thinking of suiciding, so I bit his head off and explained to him succinctly that I was a Christian, and we didn't go in for that. But apart from, that's the only time I think I lost. I didn't lose my temper, but I was very cross.
Your Eminence Cardinal George Pell, it was great to talk with you once again, and thank you very much for your time.
Good, thank you.